Hello, I'm Panos Kotzathanasis, and this is ASEAN Movie Pulse Interviews. Today I'm here with Shirley He, director of Other Side of the Mountain. How are you, Shirley?
I'm good. Thank you so much for this interview.
You're welcome, welcome. Okay, as I was reading your CV, let's say, I read that you have a background in anthropology. Can you tell me a bit is this combined with your filmmaking, let's say?
Yeah, so I majored in visual anthropology before I studied documentary for my master's degree. And in my previous study in anthropology, I think it largely influenced my framework in thinking about filmmaking. Maybe if I can say particularly for this project, this film, um, I had done a good amount of field research before going to film, before like bringing my camera and shoot the film. And whenever I work on a film project, I always make sure that I have done some groundwork in a more anthropological sense before I pick up the camera and like film people or film the place. And for this film, I was very influenced by the idea of or by the framework of ethnographies for landscapes and also auto ethnography. And for both, I think is thinking about how individual, very singular experiences are linked to a larger societal or cultural perspective. And also thinking about how landscape shapes us, and in turn, we also shape the landscape that we're in. So yeah, this is kind of just briefly how anthropological framework shaped my filmmaking, and I can also go into details about this
Please.
later.
Ah, okay. All
Oh,
right.
wait, we can do it right now also.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I guess in terms of landscape ethnography, for me, exploring Chongqing, which is in focus of this film, is thinking about how to trace the industrial and modernization that is happening on this landscape, and also the personal identities connected to this place. Um, so I think behind the camera, I took a lot of time observing what is happening in front of the camera, how is individuals and also groups interacting with the place in their varied ways, but also doing interviews with people that I met during filmmaking, during my father's journey. So talking to a lot of people, hearing about their perspective on their connection to the landscape. But at the end, it is presented as a film, not as an ethnographic film, as a documentary, I would say, instead of an ethnographic film. So definitely there are some more subjective selections of what materials I end up using in a film compared to, say, a more um, holistic ethnographic research.
And how did you came with this decision to like follow your father in this trip? Who decided to do this whole thing, let's say?
Um, my dad just bring up that he was born in Chongqing one day 2 years ago. That I actually never knew that. So this whole history happening in the family was really a mystery to me until recently. And I had been really thinking about my identity because I study abroad. I had lived outside, far away from China for a long time. So I think I wanted to start from myself, and which is why the decision is to make kind of a personal film. And also this opportunity of my dad revisiting his home place for the first time after 50 years, because he was born there and then he left and he has not been back ever since then. And thinking about making this film as an opportunity for him to also reconnect with the landscape was very exciting for me. Um, yeah, and I think maybe deep down, I also wanted to connect with my dad, and through this film is a way to perhaps understand him a little bit. And I think personally, um, maybe it's a family thing or it's a cultural thing. I have a hard time like just asking my dad questions, straight questions. But through film, I was able to observe him and use my film as a tool to understand him.
Well, and did you succeed in the end? Would you say, did you understand him better after the film?
I think so. I think at least I understand a perspective of him that I didn't know before. Um, this is the layer of him being a painter, being an artist is not the focus of the film, but it's like one part of it. So seeing this is seeing Chinese society, seeing what is happening right now through his eye as an artist was really something new to me because he always exists as a father, not as a painter, not as an artist. So in this film, I was able to see his multiple identities.
And do you feel that he understood you a little bit better after the film?
I hope so. In the making of the film, I, to be honest, when I was shooting the film, I had more of a general idea of what I'm interested in. I'm interested in landscape, its connection with the individual and a group of people, or say the collectives. And I was interested in a history that happened in Chongqing. But I think when I was explaining the idea to my father, he wasn't really understanding what I was trying to do.
Mhm.
Um, he kept questioning me, my intention to make this film, and also because he's a filmmaker, artist as well, he questioned a lot about the structure of the film. He was very not sure where the film is going to go, like the story. But I think later on when he saw the film, I think that was a moment of understanding. I will hope.
Mm, mm. So he saw the film, right?
Yes.
And what did he think in the end?
Um, I think he was moved.
Mm,
I
mm,
think. Um, he is not very expressive with words, not very affectionate like a lot of dads, but I think his way of saying that I understand you is by saying, "Hey, good editing. Finally, you put the film together."
ah,
That's
okay,
how I'm saying it.
okay, all right. And tell me a bit about how was the location in your opinion, and how were the locals after, spending some time there? What do you think
Um,
about the
you mean
area and the locals? Yes, your personal opinion.
so I this that was my sorry. I went to Chongqing 2 times for the shoots. And the first time I was there, it was quite shocking to be in a city that had transformed so much within the past decades. According to my dad, his memory of the place, also my grandmother's memory when he was there, when he was young, when she was younger, it sounded like a s- like a landscape that is drastically different from what it is now. Right now, it is a place that is so modernized with all the good, very modern infrastructures that you can always imagine that is in a modern Chinese city. And but previously, perhaps 50 years ago, when my dad was born, most of these were not here. So looking at the infrastructures like the train station, the subway station, or the highways, it was quite shocking. And but also because the transformation happens so quickly in time, you can observe, you can see that there are the combination of the very modern looking things and also traces of history. And I thought that was really interesting. And that's what I wanted to capture in my film, is that coexistence of past and present, of permanence and impermanence. Um, yeah, and I think the landscape it's just a very interesting place. There's so many things happening, and people interact with the landscape in their very, very specific ways. And I think not just my family, but also people that I talk to, they're the locals. They share a very similar sentiment about impermanence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. Yeah, and tell me a bit, your father was playing with the kids and interacting with the locals. How did you feel about that aspect? Did you know this side of his, let's say?
I had no idea. I, in a way, I think I had relied on him a little bit in making this film. And that's why I think in the end credit, um, I wanted to indicate that I made this film with him together. Um, yeah, he was the one who's talking to the locals. I also have a language barrier with the specific dialects that they speak in Chongqing, but because my dad was born there, he knew a little bit. He can use his very not right dialect to try to talk to the locals. Um, yeah, it was surprising, but also nice to see the side of him that is wanting to interact with kids and drawing. He's an animation film director, so uh, it's not too shocking to me that he used drawings to connect with kids, but it's really nice to see him actually talking and like be very engaging.
Okay. And there is a scene inside the bus where we hear Mao talking. So can you tell me a bit about that? Is there like, how do you feel about this thing, the whole scene, let's say? It's real, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that scene towards the end of the film is shot in this historical site called 816 Project. And this project specifically is linked to a historical period called the Third Front Construction, which I touched upon in this film, but it's not really the focus of the film. I would still say the focus of the film is the personal story
Hmm.
that is linked with this historical period. And in the 816 project, right now it used to be a nuclear site
Mm.
during that time in the 60s and 70s. Right now it has been turned into more of a touristy place
Hmm.
where people buy ticket and go in and have a tour guide to explain what happened. And so I shot there with a tour guide, with a tour guide for 2 times. So the sound that you hear about the historical period is actually told through the tour guide,
Hmm.
and I recorded them. Um, I think my personal view of using this in my film is to place the personal perspective, the personal story in the larger historical context.
Hmm.
Um, and also to think about what landscape or which memories are preserved and which memories are not. Um, yeah, and I think one larger question that this film trying to ask is the tension between individual memories and a more official record.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you feel there is a difference there between the two?
Yeah, I think for someone who had lived in China for a while, and I was born there, I think there's definitely some tension. Um, but I also think this is not just a specific Chinese case. I think perhaps across different culture, there's a similar sense or similar feeling that some of the personal memories are not in line with the grander narrative. And I think right now it particularly feels relevant. And that's why I wanted to comment on that a little bit in the film.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, okay. And tell me a bit about the use of sound in the film. Apart from this aspect I just mentioned, there is also this interesting thing that you do with the navigation app. We hear it, which is kind of like you use it as a sort of narration, let's say, but at the same time is a bit humorous. So I was wondering what's your general approach towards what we hear in the film?
Yeah, I'm glad that you noticed the navigation. It was definitely um both a artistic choice, but also a more a mirroring to reality. Because there, if you see in the film, there is many moments of people using phones. There's the same with my dad using the phone to video chat what of my grandmother video chatting with another grandma in the phone
Mm,
screen. So I think technology is so ingrained in our society and our daily life that it is inevitable to capture these moments of these very funny moments of human using technology to interact with each other. Um, so navigation was used when we're shooting this film. There are many times that when we're trying to find the apartment, we use a navigation app to tell us where to go. But then it's also quite unreliable because the building that we're trying to find is the name has changed and the street has changed. So it's interesting to see how it is futile to use modern technology to try to find a past. Um, yeah, and I think in general, my intention behind sound design is how do I create or find the gap between sound and image, and how could this gap between sound and image create new meanings? What can sound tell us that image cannot, or what is happening beyond the frame of the image, and that I can uh, narrate through sound.
mhm,
And there are also many moments when the sound slowly, um, gradually become more muffled. And those are also moments that I think can like reflect a little bit about the more subjective experience of sound.
mhm, mhm. And tell me also a bit about your approach editing a bit more generally. I mean, how much footage did you ended up with? How much time it took you editing and what you wanted to do while editing the film?
I actually didn't have that much footage because in the making of this film, I was quite image or yeah, I think I did a lot of storyboarding before filming, which is not quite um common in, say, observational documentary filmmaking. But because landscape is such an important subject in this film, so I really went was scouting before filming, so I kind of knew what kind of shot I wanted to get. And there was a lot of retaking, like refilming one shot, one landscape shot. So there was a lot of repetition in my actual footage. Yet I would say it's probably like 1 to 4. So one to five around that. Um, so maybe around 4 or 5 hours, maybe 3, 4 hours of footage in total, coming down to a very short 20 minutes film. And in the beginning of editing, I really was struggling to find what is the actual story arc. And that was really difficult because I felt that there's no tension in the film. And I was very lucky to have been working on this film during my study at Stanford for my MFA program. And it was really helpful to have weekly meetings with my peers and also my advisors to talk about the film. And slowly it had I like rethink about the question of what is the story arc, and does it has to be a tension between two characters, or does it have to be so specific? And later on, I think I came to term with the fact that my film will have the tension between two maybe more ambiguous themes. And Yeah, I did a lot of picture editing because the film is quite slow. Each shot is really long, so I can even print out all the shots and then put them on the ground and try to figure out where to put which shot. And to see two shots creating meanings when they're being put together was really, really cool.
Okay, good. And how did the financing work for the film? Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I was really lucky. This is my thesis film for my MFA program, so we had a bit of funding from Stanford from a private grant, I believe. So that was very nice because it can cover my flight from the US to China and back. And the school also provided coloring and sound editing services, which is super helpful.
Mm-hmm. Who holds the rights though?
I hold a right, which
Okay,
is
very
I'm
good.
very grateful for that.
Okay, all right. And the last question, I guess, can you tell me about future projects? What are you working on next?
Yeah, I'm working on a few projects right now. I think ever since this film, The Other Side of the Mountain, I became more interested in filmmaking in art space. Um, so I am currently developing this film with more footage and in conversation with other places into a spatial video installation. Also, I'm trying to write a short fiction film right now,
Hmm.
just for fun.
Okay.
But in general, yes, I want to keep working on films that touches on the theme of landscape, memory, identity.
So you choose the hard path.
Would you say so?
I think so, maybe. Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay.